downloaded the Buckeye Leafcast with your host, Andrew T. Evans, with special guest, Chris Stefanik.
Because I am an idioto.
Usted tiene muchos problemas.
Pero si habla, tenemos muchos problemas. Si tu referencias, if that's how you say reference in Espanol, pobre los Ohio State Buckeyes, que tú correcto, señor.
Sí, muy débil. Muy débil.
Muy débil está los Buckeyes. This would be a hell of a start to the show. Hell, why don't we make it the start of the show?
Let's do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, there you are, your two español se habla speaking compadres. Me llamo Andrés y mi amigo, los intergalactic Buckeye fan, Señor Christopher Stefanik.
Fanático.
Hola, mi amigo.
Soy un fanático. Muy bien.
Muy bien.
Muy fantástico.
Sí,
No.
tú estás fantástico. Pero, all right, yeah, how about, that's probably enough of the Spanish for now. But
we probably don't need to embarrass ourselves anymore.
Yeah, not like we don't do that on a weekly basis anyways.
It's true. It's true.
Mr. Chris Stefanik, how goes it, sir?
I'm doing pretty freaking good, actually. How about yourself?
Well, I'm not doing too bad. It's actually nice weather here in the Columbus, Ohio area today. It's we're going to hit about a high of mid to upper 50s. Sun's kind of out. And
fall is the best season in Ohio and North Carolina, for that matter, where I live. So, love it, sir.
What's it like right now?
I want to say upper 50s.
Okay.
That sounds about right. Maybe lower 60s. Yeah, so I'm checking right now. It says 64 degrees.
64. So, okay.
Perfect. As far as I'm concerned.
That's you can't ask for better fall weather than that.
Yeah. But you know what else you can ask for better was Ohio State's performance yesterday. Boom.
Boom. So let's just jump on into it, sir. Ohio State escapes the horseshoe with a 36-31 win over the 2-6 Nebraska Cornhuskers. So there were some good things, though, Chris, I saw out of the game. You know, obviously there's some things that need some work, but let's key on some of those good things that you saw in this 5-point win over a 2-6 Nebraska team yesterday.
Right. Well, first of all, I think it's fair that we need to say that it was a 2-6 team, but two of their losses were by field goals, late second chicanery, overtime kind of things. They very easily could have been a 4-4 team coming in.
Sure.
And while Ohio State's been getting worse as the season goes on, they've been getting better. I mean, don't forget, this is Scott Frost's first year, and he's installing a whole new offense. So it's going to take some repetitions before these guys start to click, right? And they're playing their best ball now. And they're 2-6, but they were coming in on a 2-game winning streak, right?
Sure.
So this is not your typical 2-6 kind of team, right? It was a little harder than that. But let's key on some of the things, with that in mind, that we saw were good. So first of all, there was changes. This whole year we've been saying, I know this team is ranked really high. I know that they're undefeated, prior to Purdue, but there's issues, and the coaches seem to be hey, the best thing about 6-0 is the chance to go 7-0, and they don't even it's okay, yeah, but you're not going to go undefeated if you don't fix some of these issues. You got to do something different, right? So one of those struggles was the running game. Well, this ended up being their second best running game from a yardage total, I think, since Oregon State.
Yeah, it was.
First game of the year.
Yep, absolutely.
So, what did they do differently, right? So what did they do differently? Well, the biggest thing, I got these in order. I actually wrote this down ahead of time because I'm all right, I'm going to put these in order of most important to least important.
I knew you'd come prepared, sir.
Right. So most important was they stopped calling the RPOs, the zone reads, right? This is where the quarterback reads the defense. It's kind of slow developing and decides, if they key on the running back, the quarterback keeps it. If they key on the quarterback, then he hands it off to the running back.
Right.
And this works really well if JT Barrett is your quarterback running the offense, right?
Yes, it does. And it did for many years. Right.
It does not work when you have a quarterback who cannot freaking run the ball because they just key on the running back the whole time. And, and actually, if Dwayne Haskins actually decides to keep it, which, 99% of the time he doesn't, but if he does decide to keep it, they still win because he's so bad at running the ball. You know what I mean? So it's like either hand it to the guy they're keying on and stuffing, or you have somebody who's terrible at running the ball. So they quit calling it. A huge thing. So instead they're running much more faster developing plays that doesn't give that defense time. They still might know that like it's going to the running back, but they don't have the time to key on it because it's a faster developing play. Next thing is they called more runs. They didn't call 73 pass plays. You know what I mean? Part of it is just, part of it is you just need to call the runs because running the ball, it's kind of like, I view it as like in boxing, there's like body blows, right? You don't knock a guy out with body blows in the first round, but if you keep doing body blows over and over, as you get in the later rounds, 5, 6, 7 rounds, they accumulate. And now all of a sudden the guy is ready for that knockout blow, right? And then it's just you just see it wear a guy down. And like you'd see this was really common during the Tressel era, but, including in the previous Meyer eras, is, the teams might hang around with Ohio State for the first half. And then that running starts to get a lot easier in the third quarter. And then the fourth quarter, they're just running at will because you like worn the guy down with body blows with these runs, right? And that's what you kind of saw with, it was like Nebraska was hanging with them. They're running. They're doing okay. Ohio State's doing okay running the ball. But then all of a sudden, like third, fourth quarter, they're ripping off 20-yard runs. They're ripping off 40-yard runs. And the holes are there. They're getting a big push. They're getting big holes. They wore them down. So that's the second big thing they did. Second most important. The third thing, this is actually probably the most important, but I'm putting it third because it doesn't happen without those two I just mentioned. The third is execution. So you had, like I said, for the first time since I can't remember when, the offensive line was getting a push. Instead of getting pushed backwards, they were actually moving the line a little bit forward. They weren't like blasting Nebraska 5 yards off the line of scrimmage like we've seen like that 2014 team doing, but they were, getting a push and they were opening holes. So they were executing their run blocks rather than getting blown up like we've been seeing week in and week out.
Yeah.
And the running backs were executing. They were actually making some guys miss. That was the great thing. I mean, Ezekiel Elliott, the reason why he was able to go for like 700 yards in those last 3 games of 2014 was partially because the offensive line was dominating, but partially because the first guy never got him. I mean, I shouldn't say never, but he would make that first guy miss, be it by juking him, making a cut, or just running through an arm tackle or something like that, right? Well, you started seeing Dobbins and Weber doing that, right? They're making guys miss. These are execution things. So those are the big 3. Some lesser things after that, they started to run outside a little bit. Now, I don't think they need to do a lot of running outside, but just mix it in so that the defense is no one coming. Before this, they pretty much ran it up the middle this whole season. They do the zone read right up the middle.
Yeah.
And so they started changing it up and everything was inside the tackles. They did a few outside the tackles. Formations. So the formations were actually, I think I put formations last. I think there's one more that's a little more important than just running it outside, and that's personnel.
Yes.
I don't think Farrell left the field.
Played a lot. Yeah,
where before they were rotating Farrell and Barry, and Farrell is quite a bit better of a blocker than Barry. I mean, I like Barry, Rashad Barry. He's very athletic, and when he gets the ball in his hands, if he can actually hold on to it, which sometimes can be an issue, but if he can hold on to it, he's kind of fun to watch because he can outrun guys, he can truck you, he can leap over top of you.
He's tough, but
he's an athletic freak. But he's just, a part of blocking is technique. Part of it's just nastiness. And whatever it is, Farrell's just a better blocker. So they left him in there. That helped. Then, this probably goes kind of combined. It's part personnel, part formation. Is they started going with 2 TE sets. They started going with 3 TE sets. And in these 3 TE sets, they're bringing in Wyatt Davis as a tight end.
Yes.
I remember actually in the bye week, I normally just watch Ohio State because there's only so much time in the day for football. And during the bye week, I actually watched the Wisconsin game, and Wisconsin's bringing out 3 TE sets where like 2 of their quote unquote tight ends are tackles. And I'm like, why the hell doesn't Ohio State ever do this? Why, it's like everybody knows Wisconsin running the ball when they go with this set, but you can't stop it. At least, if you need 3 yards, you get it when you got just that much beef out there on the field, right? I'm like, why the hell can't Ohio State do this? And then, I don't know, like Urban was channeling me or something, but you saw Wyatt Davis out there as a tight end. So it's pretty cool. They also did some 2-back sets, which is something that I don't really recall seeing this season. I know we saw it some in previous years, but I didn't remember seeing it this year. So those are my thing. So first at the top, getting rid of the run pass option, just doing straight runs. Number 2, just calling more runs. Number 3, execution, be it the offensive line or the running backs. Number 4, mixing in some running outside so they don't, it's just not always up the middle. Number 5, personnel, particularly Farrell. Although it was pretty cool to see, Big Daddy Wyatt Davis out there as a tight end, wearing a wide receiver number.
Yep.
And then they mixed in some new formations. A lot of people probably are like thinking the new because the new formations was like the most obvious one. But I honestly think that was the least important. It helped. Don't get me wrong, it helped. It was good to see it that they're like not just doing the same thing over and over again. But I think that was probably at the low end as far as importance as these things. So I mean, what were you thinking when you watched it?
No, I think you just touched on pretty much everything. That was definitely great to see Luke Farrell out there a lot. You mentioned, Rashad Berry being an athletic freak, which I agree. But when it comes to being a tight end, Luke Farrell just seems to be the more complete package. Rashad Berry came in as like a defensive end, then they switched him to tight end, then they switched him back. I mean, he's kind of been playing this back and forth game.
Right. They didn't do him any favors.
They didn't, and Luke Farrell came in as a true tight end, and he was, high 3-star. Some publications had him as a 4-star tight end coming out, 3 years ago. So he is more of a tight end. He can block, he can catch. Yeah, he's not overly fast, but there's not many tight ends out there that are overly fast. I mean, but he makes the catch, and he can bowl some dudes over too. I mean, he's a pretty damn big kid himself. So it was good to see Luke Farrell out there getting more time on the field. Wyatt Davis. I remember watching the replay of J.K. Dobbins' first touchdown run, and I see Wyatt Davis out there. I'm like, holy cow, they brought out Wyatt Davis. All right. Let's mix some things up. Let's get in some different looks here. And you are absolutely right. They did a lot of that yesterday. And Urban said after the game, they worked ad nauseum. He's verbatim said ad nauseum at correcting some of the, quote unquote mistakes, or at least working on the issues that had been, somewhat plaguing the running game. And you just said it. It was the second best day on the ground for Ohio State since the season opener against Oregon State. 40 total runs for the Buckeyes, 229 yards, 3 touchdowns. JK had 23 carries for 163 and all 3 of the scores. Now, here's the thing, though, that I wanted to ask you. As great of a day as JK had, Mike Weber, I thought, had a damn good day as well, except for a couple of gaffes. For a couple of gaffes. But 9 carries, 91 yards, and I really thought they were going to stick him in on that last drive so he could at least get 9 more yards so they could have 2 100-yard rushers in the same game. Something they haven't done. Well, they did it last year against Michigan State, so it's not like it's been that long ago. But I thought that would have been cool to see, and instead, Weber sat the bench while Dobbins got the nod for that final, just kind of, peter out drive. Well,
Weber. Let me say this.
Otherwise, Weber, I was happy with Weber running the ball, but for 2 mistakes, which I'm sure you're about to key on right now.
Ohio State had 6 fumbles on the day. 6 fumbles. Now, granted,
6.
They only lost 2 of them. But they're drive killers, though. Even so, like an example, one of them, they fumbled a snap, and Haskins has to fall on top of it. It's like a 3 or 4 yard loss, right? So they didn't give up the ball, but still, it's like they killed the drive, and then the drive was done. It stalled there. So 6 freaking fumbles plus, a muffed punt from KJ Hill. 2 of these, 2 for Weber, 2 fumbles were Weber, 2 fumbles were Haskins. 2 fumbles where KJ Hill is usually short. He's usually shorthanded. So he had 2 drops. He had 2 fumbles, and he muffed the punt. I'm like, what the hell happened to KJ Hill? Did somebody pee in his cereal this morning? Because this is not cool. Like, he's normally the one guy you don't have to worry about on the team. He's like just Mr. Automatic, you know? I think it was something like he caught something like 94% of the passes thrown his way. You know, not just like,
wow.
I mean, it's crazy. So not only did Weber have 2 fumbles, those are the most visible thing, but he almost ruined the Buckeyes season because and contributed directly to a 3rd fumble. He completely whiffed on a block. Actually, I think he didn't even whiff on it. He just didn't even didn't even try to pick it up. And like Haskins totally doesn't see the guy coming. And honestly, I thought Haskins broke his arm. Like, cause when I first saw it like live, you know, I mean, it's quick action live, right? That guy comes in clean and tees off on Haskins, launches into him, helmet first. And I thought when I watched it live that his helmet went right into his right forearm. And then you saw Haskins lying on the ground, like wincing and grabbing his arm. And I'm like, oh my God, he just broke his arm. I'm like, he's done for the year. I mean, maybe he can come back for the bowl game if it's just a slight fracture. I don't know. But I'm like, man, he just broke his freaking arm. And, you know, that was on Weber there. Fortunately.
Weber and I think Barry. Barry was in on that play too, if I'm not mistaken, and did not chip out.
Yeah. And then watching the replay, it actually looked like the helmet hit the ribs, not the arm. Like it was just missed the arm and hit the ribs instead. So I don't know. Unfortunately, Haskins was okay. He never looked the same after that. Like this was probably his worst game of the season. But I wonder if it's like because he was hurt, his ribs were hurting, or maybe he was gun shy from taking such a lick. I certainly couldn't blame him for that if that was the case. But you know, whatever case, that I was like, okay, yeah, Weber, I'm sorry, dude. You can't put the ball on the ground like that. You know, it's funny. I actually was I wrote, you know, I take notes while I'm watching the game, and one of the notes I made in the 4th quarter was, I'm like, you know, if you need like 3, 4, 5, 6 yards, I would rather have Dobbins running the ball, just because I think Dobbins is a better running back. You know, he's shifty, he makes good cuts, he looks like a better running back. But I'm like, you know, he just doesn't have that explosion. That he's not the home run threat. If I needed 20 yards, you know, if it's like, you know, sometimes they do that whole thing where it's like 3rd and 20 and they hand it off to the running back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
or it's like you get the ball with like 50 seconds left in the half. The other team just scored or the other team just punted and you got it at like the 20-yard line. You got 80 yards to go.
Yeah.
And you're like, you know what? I'm just going to hand it off and see what happens. I'd rather that be Weber, because I think if you're looking for 20 yards plus, he's a better option to get there. He's just more explosive.
Absolutely.
So I like literally typed that, and I swear like not even 60 seconds goes by, and Dobbins rips off a 42-yarder.
42-yard run.
So what the hell do I know? You know,
that's how it goes, right?
Right.
But you know, because of what we saw out of the rushing game, being the second best game that they've had all season, that obviously took away Dwayne Haskins, being able to pile up a bunch of stats. And
right.
He still did not have an excellent day. I mean, he was 18 of 32, which was like 56% complete, 252 yards, did throw a couple of touchdowns, but he also threw an interception, which was completely telegraphed and into double coverage in the end zone, and they were driving down the field there to start the third quarter trying to gain some momentum, and they were gaining it, and then all of a sudden he just, kind of lobs one up, like I said, into double coverage. It was telegraphed and picked off. So not an extremely great day from Haskins, but thank God the running game was on, because once again, a balanced attack, a balanced OSU attack, what we're used to seeing in having pretty much equal distribution between the run and the pass.
Yeah, what's so kind of funny to think about is if Braxton Miller comes out and throws for 250, 2 touchdowns and 1 interception, you're like, oh, he had a pretty good day passing.
Oh, we probably freak out and be like,
Terrell Pryor, 250, 2 TDs, 1 in.
JT
even JT had a lot of 300-yard games, but not like, it wasn't like, Haskins is doing. JT, we'd be like, yeah, that's a decent game. Maybe not a great game, but it's a decent game for JT. That this is like a 252 touchdown game is like, a bad game for him, right? And it is like, by his standards, it's a bad game for him. It's his worst start. That's just says like how good he's doing. So
exactly,
pretty cool.
I know there was one buddy of mine in particular that was like, oh man, Haskins was kind of, talking about how he's now, losing faith in Haskins because of the
bring on Tate Martell.
Yeah. And I'm like, damned if you do, damned if you don't, everybody's bitching about how Ohio State can't run the ball. Then they finally come out and they bust over 200 with 3 touchdowns on the ground. And, now you're saying, Dwayne, you're losing faith in him. Like, you can't have it all. I'm sorry. We're not Alabama. Okay, we're not Alabama, which we're going to get to here in a second, Chris, because I want to get your thoughts now after this very close win. Where do you think Ohio State stands in the national landscape? But let's continue to touch on this Nebraska game for a minute. Defensively, let's flip over to the other side of the ball. Did you see anything different out of the defense? What kind of work needs to be done? And do you think, we talked about this before, and I said it myself, and I still believe this to be the case, that Greg Schiano just seems to be going through the motions. He doesn't give a rat's ass to be at Ohio State right now. He wants the hell out, and he's just kind of doing as much as he can without putting too much thought and effort into it to just kind of get by until the season's over so he can get the hell out of here and leave.
All right, so there's something that really pisses me off about this defense. I'm going to hold it. I'm going to wait because we're going to go off on this shit in a minute here. But I'm going to touch on the good points.
Okay. Good stuff first, right.
So, there's actually 2 things to go off on, and both are like rant worthy. But I'm going to actually lead from the good stuff right into the rant. So, all right, the first thing is they finally changed up the coverage. So coming into this game all year long, Schiano is just playing press man, where it's like the bump and run coverage. You got your cornerbacks right up on the line of scrimmage, and our defensive backs keep getting toasted. It's like it's not working. They're giving up big plays. It just doesn't fit. We needed more of the I hate to say it, but like the Heacock defense, where like the bend but don't break, where you play the guys off the line of scrimmage and force them to put together 12 play drives and go down the field rather than giving up these 40 yarders, right? And the other thing about it is, not only that does it fit our personnel better than the press coverage, it's not ever changing it up. So it's like, there's one podcast I listen to. It's from the guys over at the Ozone, if you're familiar with them. And when he made this analogy, he said, he's like, Schiano is like a guy who's playing rock, paper, scissors, and he just keeps throwing rock. And he's like, God damn it, I can't ever beat paper. What the hell? Why can't I ever beat paper? It's unbeatable. And it's like, well, unless you throw scissors. It's like, hello, dude, stop throwing rock every freaking play.
Right.
So he came out and he started doing a lot of backing the guys off and doing like a man from backed off, doing a lot of zone, and then still coming up occasionally and mixing in the press. It's like, whoa, hey, they're not throwing rock all the time. And for large parts of the game, it was much more effective. They had their inconsistencies, but for large parts there. And then the other thing they did, and this is something, I was complaining about since early in the season. And then as the season got later, guys like Laurinaitis and Bobby Carpenter, Buckeye legendary linebackers were saying this. They're like, stop moving the linebackers up to the scrimmage. It's like, I was like, oh my God, Ohio State actually has 3 linebackers. This whole time, I thought they played, a seven defensive linemen out there. It turns out they only have 4 defensive linemen and 3 linebackers. Who the hell knew? It's just like, it wasn't working. They would get caught up in the blocks. It was like there's nothing but green grass between the defensive line and the safeties. And then they just have to make a safety miss, which our guys was pretty easy to do because the tackling sucks so bad on this team. And you're off for a 40-yard run, right? So the whole game long, I think I only saw the linebackers up on the line of scrimmage on obvious passing downs, which that's acceptable at that point. You're trying to disguise your blitz. So a lot of teams do that. Basically everybody does that. Like, you don't do it every down, every time there's a passing down, but occasionally on the passing downs, you'll put the linebackers up to disguise your blitz. So that's, the 2 really big things from a scheme wise that they started doing different. The next thing is personnel. So you had Wade start at safety. Isaiah Pryor was out with an injury. So you got Pryor and Fuller out there, which I think Wade is a better safety than Pryor anyways, and it's kind of upsetting that it took an injury for that to happen. But, it was good to see they were finally, they've been talking about playing Wade at safety for a long time, and maybe they were going to do it anyway just because they'd been talking about it even without the injury, right?
I doubt it, but
you may be right. Well, then Fuller gets a targeting call and goes out.
Oh, what a bullcrap targeting call, too. I'm sorry.
Total bullcrap call. Yep. Targeting is the stupidest rule, but actually the referees did Ohio State the biggest favor ever. Now, at the time, I'm sitting there thinking, oh, my God, are you telling me Jason Wint is going to come in? I mean, I'm sorry, dude. I know you're probably a good guy, probably high character. You're probably a Buckeye through and through, but you're not an Ohio State quality player. I'd say the same if Urban Meyer wanted to put me out there at safety, I'd be like, dude, I'm not an Ohio State quality player. Don't do it. You want to put my bro Andy Evans out there?
Yeah,
dude, you're a great Buckeye, man. You're a great person. I love you, brother, but you're not an Ohio State quality player. I don't know if Jason Wynn is even like a MAC level player. I think he takes such bad angles that the only way you can recover from that with using athleticism is you have to have like orders of magnitude better athleticism than the guy you're chasing to recover from a bad angle. The Power 5 level, you're not orders of magnitude better than like MAC schools. I think he's more like a Division II or subdivision kind of player. Seriously, dude, he's just not. He does not deserve to be out on the field. So I'm like, oh my God, Fuller's out and we're going with this guy. We're in trouble. Insert Brendan
White.
I'm watching this game and I'm like, not only is he like better than Isaiah Pryor, not only is he obviously better than Wint,
he might be the best.
He looks better than Fuller. He looked like the best player on that defense. The whole defense, and then after the game, I was like, okay, am I just crazy? Or, maybe it was just like shock from like watching such bad safety play all year that I'm like putting more weight on White's performance. Pro Football Focus grades every single play. They had White as the second best defender after Chase Young from coming out of that game. So the professionals that grade every down graded White as the second best defender. I'm like, dude, he looks better than Fuller. When Fuller was like preseason All-American, I'm like, why the hell was that? Okay, maybe like in practice, it looks pretty close between him and Isaiah Pryor. I don't know. But like Wint, how could you possibly think Jason Wint is a better player than this guy? I'm like, oh my God, this is like the best player on the friggin' defense. This is the best safety we've had since Malik Hooker. Or at least for maybe this is a total aberration. Maybe next week he'll come out and be like, you know what, Andy, the stars just aligned and White had a good game and he's really trash. The coaches apparently know more than I do. I'm mea culpa, Maybe that'll happen, but there's a small sample size. But my God, that was the best safety game I've seen since Malik Hooker at Ohio State. So
I concur. I mean, 13 tackles, Chris. 13 tackles.
Oh, and a couple of those, like he had a couple down in the red zone where remember they kicked that field goal at the end of the game? He had 2 tackles inside the 5 that probably if they put Wint in there, he's not making those tackles. Maybe even Fuller is not making those tackles. There's an argument to be made that without White, we lose to freaking Nebraska, 2-6 Nebraska. And so, I'm looking at this and I'm like, I'm starting to get pissed. I'm like, are you we've been watching this team all year and questioning some of the personnel moves, We're like, the linebackers, Booker's gotten in there and it looked better than the starter. Hilliard's gotten in there and has looked better than the starters. We're watching Farrell is outplaying Barry all season long, but yet they're splitting time. And I'm like, what's going on here? And then Wade looks better. Sean Wade looks clearly better than Jason Wint. It looks like he's better than Isaiah Pryor, but he's like at the nickelback. And you know what I mean? And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? I'm really questioning the coach's ability to evaluate talent or their ability to like run a meritocracy. When Urban Meyer came in, he said, this is going to be a meritocracy. The best player is going to play. It's not about seniority, which is one of the big complaints about Jim Tressel, right? Is Jim Tressel, the seniors played over the younger guys. And you're like, what the hell? I'm like, this is one of our best. This is clearly one of our top 2 safeties. I mean, unless like literally that was just a complete freak thing that he managed to put together one game and he's hot garbage the rest of the season. I'm not seeing it, but maybe that happens. And let me add to this, Andy. White is one of these guys who's moved around. Like he was on offense at wide receiver. He was at linebackers for a while. He came in as a linebacker, then moved to wide receiver, then went to linebacker, then to safety.
Yeah.
I'm like, this guy, how is he not better than our linebackers? He's a 220-pound guy. They can move him out here. I mean, he's like Darren Lee size. So I'm like, okay, I really like Wade. I think Wade is one of our better players. So I'm thinking like, we either start White and Fuller at safety, and then you move Wade back to being the nickel back, and then you go like nickel all the time. So that you only have 2 linebackers out there because you're getting your best players on the field. Or go back to starting Wade and Fuller at safety and move White, like put him out there for Pete Werner. I'm like, my God, this would be like the linebackers would be so much better with Werner, especially because they do this shit. And this pisses me off too. Werner's out there covering that Spielman kid who's like an
totally do not get that decision at all.
And
I just do not get it.
He's getting toasted for like big touchdowns. They had him on Rondale Moore when we played Purdue. Rondale Moore is like one of the best wide receivers in the country. He's probably going to get freshman of the year, And they've got Pete Werner covering him. Like, I know Pete Werner is not a very good linebacker. He's at least at this point in his career, he's young, but he's not up to the standard of Ohio State linebackers. But that's not even fair to put him on that. And I'm like, if you're going to do that, like if that's what you're going to do, then put White as at that outside linebacker spot and have him covering. This is at least you got like a safety that can do it. And this is a guy who could fill like that Darren Lee role, because Darren Lee, they used to do that a lot of times. He'd be out there and he was athletic enough, and he played safety in high school. Just like White played safety in high school. He could actually get out there and cover. And that's why he went so high in the NFL draft, because he was a linebacker who could actually cover. He could play the run, he could blitz, he could cover, and that's the modern NFL. You need that from your linebackers. Well, I'm like, shit, I'm not so sure. Just getting the best 11 guys out there. Maybe you move White in place of Werner, and put Wade back there. I don't know, but White he needs to be in that. Whatever they go with, White needs to be one of them. So that's my, one of my major things ranting here. It was both an improvement. We got some personnel improvements, which, because it was just a freaking black hole, that safety spot next to Fuller all year. And one of the reasons why we've given up so many freaking long plays is that safety, which is, they're called a safety for a reason. They're the last line of defense, supposed to keep you from getting it, has taken a bad angle or missed a tackle and led to a huge play.
Right.
Oh, it looks to me like we've got the answer there, and not just like a small improvement, but like a really good improvement. So excited about that, but at the same time, now kind of pissed off. That's my rant. One of my rants. I have another rant coming in a minute. What the hell is going on with these personnel decisions? It's like, I think if you don't perform on the field, is your position even at threat?
Well, it's interesting because you talk about Urban Meyer when he came in, and he did make that statement: the best guy is going to play. I don't care if they're a freshman or they're a senior or they're the water boy or Paul Keels calling the game. Whoever the hell is the best damn player is going to get on the field and play. But as we have seen, okay, and this is human nature, and it's okay to be this way in certain aspects, you are going to reward someone who has bided their time. They've done things right. They go to class. They've graduated. They're getting good grades. Whatever the case is, they stay out of trouble. They're not out there doing a bunch of stuff to get arrested or just, looking like a punk and giving the football team a bad name. He has played some of those guys over other guys, but in this regard, okay, it is clearly obvious, Now, like you said, maybe it's an aberration of sorts. Maybe Brendan White was flying so high because he got a chance to not only play, which he did say after the game yesterday, that there were some packages, some third down packages that they had cooked up where Brendan White was going to come in the game and play. Now, that was probably because they knew Isaiah Pryor was hurt, right? And so they were moving Shaun Wade back to the starting safety spot, and they were bringing Brendan White in Shaun Wade's place. And then, of course, Fuller gets ejected. White has to come in and play the entire rest of the game, and obviously he made it count for every single second that he was out there. Maybe it was an aberration, though. Maybe he's so friggin' excited that he's on the field, he's just a big ball of energy and just bursts and just comes out and just goes nuts. You know what I'm saying?
I love it when you talk about nuts and bursting.
He was like a big Buckeye nut that just burst all over the place because he was so excited that he was in the game, and not just in the game for a play or two, but in the friggin' game. And maybe he comes out next week. Hell, you know what? Isaiah Pryor's going to get the start next week anyways, and Fuller will be back, and it'll be back to the same old defense. I bet you will not even see Brendan White out on the field. And if you don't, that's just going to be a friggin' tragedy, because that kid needs to play. And another position group they need to take a long, hard look at getting some other guys on the field is linebacker. You mentioned about how Jocelyn went. Great kid, probably, Buckeye through and through, bleeds scarlet and gray, gives it his all, but just unfortunately not there. Pete Werner is another one of those guys. He's been out there for a couple of interview sessions throughout the week, and just seems like a real nice, humble, down-to-earth kid, seems to be personable. Unfortunately, he just does not have it right now. And you actually just touched on it a few minutes ago. You said he's young, and he's a true sophomore. But we've seen a lot of linebackers come in here, Chris, as true freshmen, redshirt freshmen, true sophomores, and they come in and they tear it up. Right. And I don't.
We were just talking about
Darren Lee,
redshirt freshman on that 2014 team was amazing.
Yeah. I remember Andy Katzenmoyer, an absolute physical genetic freak. His true freshman year was by far above and beyond better. The best year of his collegiate career, his true freshman year. The list could go on and on. Pete Werner, buddy, I just don't see it out of you. You miss way too many tackles. I don't like you out there covering the flanker out on the wide side of the field.
The opponent's best wide receiver.
Come on, Greg Schiano. What are you thinking? Seriously. Just come on. Get your head out of your butt. And you may not want to be here much longer, Greg, but just do yourself and Buckeye Nation and this team a friggin' favor, and that is figure things out when it comes to these linebackers or whoever's in charge, Bill Davis, whatever the case is. Figure it out and get guys on the field that want to be there, that they're not just Buckeyes through and through, but they're talented enough to be there, and they're going to make the plays, and they're going to make this defense look a lot better than 142nd in the country or whatever the hell they're ranked. I got the national stats. I'm going to pull up right now Ohio State's total defense. But that, Chris, that is my rant. I don't know how you feel, but right now, definite personnel changes need to be made, not only in the secondary, but at the linebacker group. But with 3 regular games left, or 3 games in the regular season left, I don't think you're going to see it. I just don't think you're going to see it. And we just have to learn and accept that what we see is what we get, and we just have to go ahead and learn to live with it from here on out.
Well, I would also say that on the offensive line, there's some personnel changes that probably should be considered. It's one, it might be the case where you're like, yeah, we know Demetrius Knox is not good, but nobody else in practice looks good either. But I'm like, but you know what? It's not working. Just try something different. Just try it and see. Maybe you put Wyatt Davis out there, maybe Josh Myers or whatever. Just try it and see.
Something. Play
Michael
around,
Jordan was like the best guard on the team. He's playing at a position. Maybe you improve 2 positions by bringing in Josh Myers at center, who's known to be a run blocker. His issue is pass blocking, not run blocking. Bring him in at center and help the rushing game, and then you also you get a guy who's known to be a road grader at center, and you're getting your best guard playing in the position where he can do some damage, but it's like, it's not working, try something else. But that's the player, the apparent lack of a meritocracy, the apparent just mind-boggling personnel decisions, rant number 1. Rant number 2, you're talking about Greg Schiano, and this I actually probably put more on Fuller, but it's related to Schiano. This came out over the bye week, and when I heard it, my jaw dropped. So you remember 2013, Ohio State was really bad at defense. They were actually I think 120th in the country at tackles, meaning like they missed a crap ton of tackles, right? Meaning
they sucked.
Yeah, like the less missed tackles you have, the higher you are on the list. Like if you missed the least tackles of any team in the country, you're number 1 in tackling. You missed the most, you're at the bottom. They were like 120th in tackling and missed tackles in 2013. Got rid of Withers, insert Chris Ash. They went from 120th to literally number 1 in 2014. And if you don't think that was a part of them winning the national title in 2014, then you just might as well turn off your machine right now, because you're clearly, I'm not going to be able to follow any of the stuff we're saying. You need to go turn on Dora the Explorer and, get on something your level.
Yeah.
I mean, so, and how they turned that around, Chris Ash brought in rugby tackling. So now here's the thing about rugby tackling. It's not so much that it's that much more effective than traditional football tackling as far as getting the guy to the ground. That's not where it's about the same in its effectiveness. Where rugby tackling is superior to regular tackling is there's very little chance of injury to both the person tackling and the person that you're tackling. So the tackler and the tacklee, you don't injure them. Because what happens in rugby, I've had friends that play rugby. I've never played, but I've had friends that play. And they say, Chris, you can't blast a guy in rugby because you're not wearing pads. If you run up and just blast a guy like you would in football, you're going to hurt yourself. So what happens is you pull up and you do more of an arm tackle. You pull up at the last second and you wrap them up. Well, what this means is, since there's not that threat of injury, you can practice tackling all season long. So during the Chris Ash era, they would practice tackling every week. And there's like stories that they were like 3 or 4 days prior to playing Alabama in the playoffs in 2014, and they're practicing live tackling. No, this was like unheard of if you do regular tackling. You practice it in spring football, and then you practice it maybe a little bit like when you're early on your bowl prep, and when you're working on fundamentals, you practice in the spring, but you do not practice tackling in the season because you need to recover from the bumps and bruises you took on Saturday, right? You need that to recover, but you could. So just the fact that you're practicing it all the time, you get good at it. Go figure. Practice makes perfect. So they went from 120th to 1st. Enter Greg Schiano. They get rid of rugby tackling. They now don't practice. The bye week was the first time they had practiced tackling since summer, and they're awful at they're back to like 120th in the country in tackling. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Why did Urban ever allow Schiano to get rid of rugby tackling? This was like this was innovative. Urban Meyer in the past has been an innovator. When he first went with the spread, it was innovative. With the stuff he was doing with the zone read, and he was an innovator. He's not really an innovator anymore. But man, when Chris Ash came in, I was like, oh, okay, he's being innovative. Like nobody else is doing this, and we took him from worst to first. That was amazing. Keep it up, man. This is great. That's if we're going to be like one of the best tackling teams in the nation, that's going to go a long ways towards success. Especially when you pair it with the kind of recruiting that Urban Meyer is able to do, right? Why would you ever stop doing that? That makes no friggin' sense. So I don't know. If you get next time you're in a press conference, do whatever it takes. Like raise your hand, jump up and down, try to get them to allow you to ask Urban a question. And please, for the love of God, just ask and be like, hey, so from 2013 to 2014, you went from worst to first by implementing rugby style tackling. And then Greg Schiano comes in, and you go from first to worst again when you got rid of rugby style tackling. Have you ever considered going back to rugby style tackling, Coach? Please ask him that question. I'm begging you, Andy.
Okay. All right. You know what? I'm going to do my best on Wednesday. I'll raise my hand. Now, I got to think of it in a tactful way. I think how you presented it was pretty tactful. Maybe just tweak a couple of things.
Like, what the fuck is wrong with you, Coach?
Yeah. Yeah. But I think, seriously, probably asking him something along those lines, I'll surely give it my best shot just for you, sir. I'll be like, actually, I am asking this question on behalf of the intergalactic Buckeye fan, Mr. Chris Stefanik, Coach. He'll look at me and be like, huh?
Fanatico Intergalacto.
¿Cómo? No sé, no habla el inglés. No. But no, that's a great point. You can see that, and it's not just Pete Werner. There's several other guys on the team that have been having issues with tackling. Jordan Fuller, Isaiah Pryor, The defensive backs, Kendall Sheffield's out there getting toasted yesterday. I mean, what is it about this Ohio State defense that they just make the other team's quarterback just look like all everything? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All everything.
Yeah.
Once again, another game where an average quarterback, he goes 22 of 33, this Adrian Martinez, 22 of 33, 266 yards, a touchdown, and no interceptions. And, those stats, I'm sorry, this is a true friggin' freshman, and they make him look like, a world beater. I'm sorry, I know, are those extremely gaudy stats? No. But just say that again, 22 of 33. He only threw 11 incomplete passes, 266 yards, a touchdown, and no interceptions. This defense has a problem with tackling and creating turnovers and making some schmo look like they're one of the best damn quarterbacks in the country every week.
I couldn't agree more, man.
And that'll conclude part 1 of the Buckeye Leafcast. Be sure to download part 2 later in the week, where Chris and I talk about the Buckeyes and their ability to beat other teams in the top 10, as well as preview their big top 20 showdown against the Michigan State Spartans in East Lansing this coming Saturday.